quick little live stream, probably 30 minutes or so. I wanted to talk about how to prepare yourself for a bid. I know a lot of you guys probably have this question. You started your business and you're trying to generate some money. So the best thing to know is how to prepare yourself for a bid, right? So there's two types of bids. You can do time and materials, or you can just do a straight bid, just a flat number, accept it or leave it type deal. When I first started my business, I always did time and material. I always tried to push the customer towards time and material because number one, I was learning, and number two, I didn't want to cut my own foot off by saying I could do something in a certain amount of time and then not being able to do it. So I would have to finish the job anyways, but I wouldn't make any money, right? So my first year, 2 years, 3 years were basically just time and material bids. Like there was like two or three of them where I had a really good idea of what it was going to take, and so I just gave them a number and said, take it or leave it type deal. Now I've since moved on to just bids. I just give them a number and say, this is what it's going to take to get the job done. Take it or leave it, plus or minus a few $100, depending on materials and stuff. And so the first thing you want to have when you go to do a bid is, you want to take a shower. You want to look good. You want to have your company logo on something, right? You don't want to pull up. I mean, you can pull up in a beater, but it ain't the best idea. You want to have a decent vehicle, that looks presentable, and it better be clean inside. Let me just put it that way. That vehicle better be spotless inside. It better be clean, because lots of times you go up to a homeowner and they're so excited because somebody's showing up to give them a bid for their dream project or something. And then the first thing they do is they look at your car and they're like, what the flip? Like, who is this? They're not expecting you, right? Unless you got lots of excavation guys, you'll see this everywhere. They got the big, lifted, jacked up pickup trucks. You don't need that. A pickup truck definitely is nice. It's a utility vehicle. You get stuff done with pickups. So showing up in a car or SUV isn't always the best. Showing up in your dump truck, isn't always the best either, but it shows, it just shows. You must say upfront, cash only. Front only, cash accepted. It sucks. Well, I do, I don't only accept cash. I accept cash, checks, and credit cards through my business. And, I've done it that way ever since. Usually, though, I would be hesitant to accept a check from a young guy that's younger than myself. I would be hesitant to accept a check because young people don't have checks, so it's either cash or credit card usually. But old people, I would say, more mature people, 40s and up, if they got a check, or a cashier's check, no big deal. Like almost every single business pays you with checks. So, if you're going to accept checks from businesses, obviously take a look at your customer and look at them real close. What kind of house do they got? If they got a crummy house, and there's garbage everywhere, then you might not want to accept a check from them. You might want cash, And so I've been burned working for homeowners more than I have when I worked for. No, we don't accept Dogcoin or Bitcoin, Morgan. That's funny. Not at the moment, at least. With the way society's going, who knows? 10 years from now, that might be the only thing we accept. You never know. But so Nowadays, every single bid I do in the estimate and usually in person, I try and tell them I need 50% of the total bid upon arrival of my equipment, you know. And then depending on the customer, you know, I'm a little more lenient or I'm a little stricter. You know, if they look like they can't afford what I'm going to be doing, then I want it up front. You know, if they are well established, you know, you can tell they look retired, they don't play around, you know, you can tell. You can just, once you've been in business a while, you'll gain a sense of, you know, you'll get that sixth sense. You can tell when somebody has money and not, or when they have enough for the job. And so, you know, sometimes, like, I used to never take money until the job was done. I changed that because I got burned or messed up one time where the deal wasn't between me, it was between me and a lady, and then she had a deal that I didn't know about between her neighbors and her. Like, the neighbors were going to pitch in for this, and then she was going to pay me, which I didn't know about that. I thought it was just between me and her, you know, and then one of the neighbors was not happy with what I did, and what I did, it was exactly what my contract was with the customer. You know, like, I fulfilled my contract, my bid, everything that was in that contract. I fulfilled it. I did exactly the way I said I was going to do it. And then the neighbor that was supposed to pitch in for that I didn't know, was unhappy with it because he was some super operator, and so she didn't want to pay me. And I was like, whoa, wait a second here. I don't cater to this guy that I don't even know, that I've never even met, that I didn't make a deal with him. I made a deal with you. The agreement was between me and you, so you have to pay me what is the contract, you know, or I'm going to take you to court type deal. And anyways, long story short, now I have to take 50% up front. You know, I always just tell them that. And, you know, and most people are very, you know, yeah, okay, here's 50%. They're happy with 50%. You know, it helps cash flow these bids, right? Especially if it's a larger bid. You know, if you've got a lot of money in materials, you're going to want that 50% up front too to help cash flow that, right? So you're not backing up your other payments and stuff. You know, I know a lot of you guys run on debt, so it'll keep your debt lower while you're doing the job. And then once you get paid, then the debt that you had to do the job is completely squashed. So instead of having all of it until the job is complete. So do 50% up front, and then like 50% upon arrival. That's what I do. And then, so show up presentable, nice car, some sort of name, company logo. Don't show up in pajamas and flip-flops. Don't show up in, you know, homeless clothes. You know, obviously, there have been times where I have gotten off of a job and the time is not there for me to go home and take a shower. And this is what I always do. I say, hey, man, I'm really, I'm super swamped right now. I can squeeze your bid in at this hour, but I'm going to be coming from a job site, so I'm kind of dirty, you know, and stinky. So I give them a heads up. If I'm going to do something like that, you always give them a heads up. Communicate. When you're doing bids, communication is key. You know, from the time that customer reaches out to you that first time, you need to be on them like that. You got to be on top of the communication. You cannot let time go by. That is one of the biggest things customers have said to me that they appreciate with me. Like, they've used several contractors and they always, almost 100% of the time, this is what they always say to me. Brian, you are on top of, you know, the communication. Like, you are very excellent at communicating, and I never felt like when I messaged you or called you that I wasn't going to get a response for, you know, who knows how long. Like, I've contacted people before and I get the answer machine and they call me like a week later. I've had people, this is what they're telling me, I've had people, they never answer the phone, they never do anything, and then I hear from them like 2 weeks later. You cannot be that guy when you're doing bids. You have to be as fast as you can. Your phone's got to be on. It's got to be, the volume's got to be up. It sucks being in business because you live right next to your phone. You sleep with that phone on. You sleep with it loud, And I have started to turn my phone down overnight, but as soon as I wake up, that thing is full blast volume, because if I get a message or a call, I'm responding to that immediately. If you're driving, pull over and answer it. Pull over and respond to a message. That is one of the biggest things. Yeah, Morgan, I agree with that. I'd rather deal with the phone than the boss too. And it does suck. There are times, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there are times I'm out fishing with the boys, or I'm out, spending time with the family, and boom, you get a call, and it is so annoying, So here's what you do. Most phones nowadays, if somebody calls you, you can respond with a text message, right? It's not rocket science. It just says, I'll call you back. I'll call you back in a second, I'm with family. Or I'll call you back in a second, I'm driving. Or, respond. You got to respond, because if you don't, they're going to be calling somebody else up for that work. Yeah, you do what you got to do, So, that is one of the biggest things. And I've had, 70% of my customers always complain to me. They're like, Brian, I tried this. I was trying to get a bid from this other contractor, and the guy never answered the phone. He never called me back. Like, that's almost one of the first things they always say to me. And that right there, if they say that to you, the price goes up a little bit, right? Because they're paying for you to communicate the way they want you to communicate. And they want very fast responses. They want you to communicate, right? So that level of communication costs more, right? So just remember that. If you're the type of guy that responds in 5 minutes of them sending you a text, or, if you don't answer their call, if you're calling them back in 5 minutes, that price better be going up, right? Because you may not be doing work, like actual work that they want you to do, that they want to pay you for, but you're working. So you need to be compensated for that. So remember that in your bid, right? The communication costs, right? So if you're, super fast at responding, that's part of it. I've had several times where, customers are willing to pay more to a guy who answers their calls every time, that responds with text message every time. They feel like there's a human on the other phone, So know your worth. That's part of your worth. Okay. Then showing up with the right tools. Okay, so you show up in your nice car, your decent looking car. It doesn't have to be a Lamborghini or nothing. Show up in your decent car, clean, looking good. You show up. What kind of bid are you doing? Okay. Is it an excavation bid? Okay. You should probably have some sort of little flags, some sort of stakes, some sort of paint, a wheel roller, some sort of wheel roller. Definitely have your phone to take pictures or notes. Low bid always wins. No, it doesn't. That trucking. No, it doesn't. The bid that wins is the guy that sounds like he knows what he's doing the best. I guarantee you, the low bid does not always win. It's usually the guy that is the most professional with the most economical. It's a combination of the two. It's not just the guy that's going to come in and do it for the cheapest. That is not what always wins the bid. I don't believe that. because there's been some times where I've bid it pretty good and I've won because I know what I'm doing, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and they sense that from me. I just have that aurora around me somehow. They know exactly what I'm doing, and they customers pick up on that. Like if you're trying to fake your way through something, they'll probably pick up on it. And when I first started, I lost a few bids because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I basically told them that. I said, look, I've never really done a lot. I'm a very hard worker, and I work very efficiently, but I've never done this before, so you're going to work with me on this, and so I said, back then I was doing it by the hour, and I said, give me at least a day to show you that I'm a hard worker, and that you're going to save some money on this because I'm charging you by the hour and not by just doing a bid. And so, a lot of people worked with me on it. They're like, yeah, I'd like to see, what you can do in 8 hours. So, they put $700 up on the line, and every single time they were always happy. They're like, man, Brian, you do work fast and efficient, and very glad I chose to work with you on this project. And then I always tell them too, I'm like, man, I did this job for this, with time and materials, but realistically, another contractor would have charged you this for it, And I always tell my customers too what realistic bids are, And I am definitely cheaper than most because I have a lower overhead, right? I own my equipment. I own my dump trucks, except for that one super dump. I own everything outright, 100%. So, and I tell them that too, and they love to hear that. You guys have no idea how much people love to hear that. You own your own equipment? Holy smokes. Like, they know it. Like, yeah, and that's another thing, Bat. To be licensed, insured, and bonded. That's very important as well. You don't ever want to try and do it without licensed, insured, and bonded, because if you mess up, the customer should not have to pay for that. You're gonna pay for it, whether or not you have insurance or not. You're gonna either get sued or they're coming after you somehow, So licensed, insured, and bonded. I know it sucks, but you gotta be. That's just, you pay to play. Okay, so how to prepare yourself for the bid? Okay, so you show up first. One of the other important things, very important. It sounds stupid and trivial, but very important. Know their name. Know their name when you show up. And say, like when you walk out, when you get out of the car, hey, David, you've never met him before, but you've talked to him on the phone. Look at the name on the phone. It's not that hard. When you pull up, check the text message and refresh me, okay? I'm very bad at names, but I make that extra effort right as I'm pulling up or a block before I get there. Remember the name, check the name, got it. When I show up, people love that right there. It's so stupid and so trivial. You can't just walk up, say, hey, yeah, I'm, here to do the bid, If you greet them with their name, nice to meet you, David. I'm here to do the bid, Boom. Not only does that help you remember their name, but it also makes them feel good. Like, I don't know why it works, but it works. When they hear their name, when you hear you calling their name, there's a sense of confidence exchange. There's some sort of trust. It's just way better. So that's one thing I always try and do also. Remember their name. As soon as you go up, greet them with their name. So let me just give you an experience I had 2 days ago. I showed up in Lake Cushman to do a bid, and I looked at the address, and I thought I was at the right place. I was at the wrong place. It was next door. I didn't know. Anyways, I pull down the driveway, hop out of the car. I'm like, hey, David, I'm here to do the bid. And he's like, oh, I'm not David. I'm like, oh, interesting. Can you help me find this address? And he's like, oh yeah, what's the address? And it happened to be next door, you know. And then next thing I know, I hear this, hey Brian, it's up here, you know. And I'm like looking around, where'd that voice come from, you know? And David was up there, and I was like, oh hey David, you know. And then, but when I said, hey, hi David, I'm here to give you the bid for the driveway, you know, the dude's driveway was, it was a disaster, right? Like he had concrete, it was flush, and then there was tree roots coming under. The concrete literally rose about that high where the roots were. I'm not even joking. Like the concrete was like you could not drive a regular sedan or a coupe car over it without bottoming out. Like an SUV, barely. Coupe or sedan car, no way. It's guaranteed bottom out. You know, unless it's like a Subaru or something. But pull in. I'm here to, hi David, I'm here to bid your driveway. You know, he's like, oh, I'm not David. But speaking of driveways, this is what he said. Speaking of driveways, I'd like a bid on my driveway. You know, as you can see, it needs some attention, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to help you, you know. So I started looking at it. And then that's when the neighbor, you know, I'm kind of loud too because I'm going deaf because of my dump trucks. So I speak louder than most people. Anyways, he heard me and was like, hey, Brian, I'm over here. And I'm like, oh, hey, David, you know. And I'm like, and I got the gentleman's name again. I was like, what was your name? And he's like, oh, my name's Ron, you know. And it's like, well, nice to meet you, Ron. I'll be right back. I want to go take care of this, take care of David, and then I'll be right back to help you out with your project, you know. And then so I went up there. And I started talking to David, and I was like, hey, David, you know, sorry about that. I did work in this area, you know. That's another thing that is very, very confidence inspiring. When you can tell them that you've done work in that neighborhood before, it really boosts their confidence. I'm not saying lie to them, but if you have been in that area and you have done work in there, definitely tell them, you know. I was in that, I installed all the fiber optics in that particular area, and I said, hey, David, you know, I knew it was on vanduyndt Drive, you know, because I've been down here. I installed all the fiber optics for this whole neighborhood. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's so cool, you know. And he's like, I got this project, you know, I got my driveway. And his driveway wasn't bad or nothing, right? It wasn't bad. But he's like, I'd like to clean it up. I'd like to have it regraded, you know, because basically his house was here. The driveway kind of went like this, bead, and then it kind of sloped back up. And then the end of his parking was like way over here. And I'm like, okay. And so what else would you like done, you know? And that's always asked that. What else are you planning on doing, you know? Like, what else do you want to do, you know? And, you know, so got all the information out of them, you know, and always try and hold a good conversation with the customer, right? You know, do you have any kids? You know, you can tell, like, if they have a very nice piece of property, compliment them on their property. Like, man, this is a beautiful piece of property. Like, you guys really have a great spot here. I love the view. It is just amazing, man. It looks so sweet. Don't lie to them. Tell them the truth, you know. Compliment them, though. They love that. And so you compliment them. You're chit-chatting, you know, about stupid stuff. That's another thing. Preparing yourself for a bid. Give yourself time to do the bid, okay? Some people love to talk, okay? They love to talk. Some people love to talk. They love to tell you their story. They love to tell you about their kids. They love to tell you about how they bought the place, what their dreams are, you know, and some of them like to tell you their problems. You got to listen to all of it. So prepare, give yourself enough time, right? You do not want to rush a bid, okay? You do not want to rush a bid. It's just like fishing. When you toss that line out, you aren't immediately, you know, cranking that thing in as fast as you can. give yourself time for the bid, okay? That's very important when preparing for a bid. Make sure you have enough time, right? Because here's what happens. You show up at the wrong house, and you end up having to do a bid for them too. And guess what? If you would have had a certain time frame allotted, let's say like 15 minutes, and then you had to be somewhere else, guess what? You just lost that opportunity to give another bid of another potential customer, right? So I always try and schedule bids for when I know I'm going to have an hour, at least an hour. I always try and give each customer. If it goes on longer than an hour, I always like, oh, it's been nice talking to you. I have, another appointment I'd like to get to. Not trying to rush you or anything, but it's, I have another appointment, So just remember that an hour is plenty of time to do a bid, usually, for a homeowner. And so I always just plan an hour, and, I always try and plan bids for the end of the day. Typically, usually it's the end of the day, so I can chit chat with them for as long as they want. And then, let's see what else. Yeah. So another thing when you're preparing for a bid, and this is for you new guys, it's going to be harder to do this, but for the old people, that have been in business for a while, you guys already know this, you've done work in the area before. Always bring that up, like, hey, yeah, I worked a block away from here, doing this, and yeah, so get pictures, definitely get pictures. And then here's another thing that always is very important, scheduling the job. When you do the bid and you tell them the number, right? When you do the bid and you tell them, for this job, we're looking at about $3,000, $2,500 to $3,000, depending on the amount of gravel I have to bring in. And then they're like, okay, that sounds reasonable, and then they usually ask you, so how's your schedule looking? And this is what you say. This is what I always try and say. I always try and say something along the lines of, right now we're super swamped. Honestly, I'm super swamped all the time. So I always tell them I'm super swamped at the moment. Let me get back to you on my schedule, right? Please text me the dates that work best for you, right? A lot of times homeowners want to be there, right? They want to make sure you're getting what's done that they want done. They also want to be able to check up on the work that you've done before you take off, right? That's a big thing for homeowners. Like, they always want to give you that stamp of approval before you load up your stuff and take a hike. So, and some people have enough confidence in you, they don't need to see it, right? They've already seen your work in the past, so they're okay with it. They're like, hey, man, I'll be gone this week, do it then, and here's the money. They pay you ahead. That's happened to me before. Or they, send me a check in the mail before I even start, and then I do half the work, and I'm going to be on the job site for more than a day, and I say, text them a few pictures. Here's the progress we made. I should be done today, or I should be done in 2 days. This is the progress, and people love that. They want to see the progress. So always send them pictures. Take pictures. It's always good for your Instagram too, or your Facebook or your YouTube or whatever, your website, or your portfolio if you keep a folder, with the portfolio. That's another cool thing, if you want to bring a portfolio with you to a website, because you're going to be doing some sort of landscaping, and a lot of customers have no idea what they want. They just want something, right? I want a rock wall here, They don't even know what kind of rock. They don't even know what color rock. They don't know what size rock. They just want a rock wall. I want a retaining wall here. That's what they want. So you bring them pictures of stuff you've done in the past, and you're saying, so let's look through these pictures, what type of rock wall are you wanting? What size? You have to have these questions in your head going into the bid. That's very important, is knowing these questions. What type of job are you doing, right? So if you're doing a driveway, there's lots of questions you have to have in your head. What's up, Drew? So when you're doing, let's just say a driveway, for instance. Okay, so if you're doing a driveway, you know for a fact you're bringing in rock, right? You know for a fact you're bringing in rock. Okay. Are you going to have to bring a machine to spread it, or do any grading while you're there? Okay, so there's some questions you got to ask. When you know those things, you got to think of these questions. Okay, what type of grading am I doing? How much grading am I doing? What type of rock? What color rock? What size rock? How much rock? Right? So those are things you have to think of in your head. When you go to do the bid, you need to ask your customer, what size rock do you want? We got a 5/8 minus. It's really crushed. It's fine. It compacts very well. It's smooth to drive over. We got 1.25 minus. It's a little bit larger. It's crushed. It compacts very well, but it's a little bit bumpier. Once it's compacted, it's a little bit bumpier than 5/8 minus, but it lasts longer, right? It lasts longer because it takes longer for those chips of rock to break down, right? That's a plus. They like the differences, right? 5/8 minus is smoother. 1.25 minus lasts longer. It's a little bit bumpier, but it lasts longer. People like to know these differences, right? And then you have to look at what color rock they have in their driveway already, right? If they got blue rock in their driveway, don't bring them black rock. Don't bring them gray rock if they got black. Don't bring them red rock if they got blue rock. Look at what color rock they got. Look at what size rock they got, right? So if they have rock and you're looking at it, when you go to do your bid, you should know what size rocks look like what size rocks, right? It's hard to tell when you're driving a dump truck and you're looking at piles when you're driving by the quarry. It's harder to tell. When you go to do a bid, you need to be able to look and say, oh, that's 1.25 minus, right off the top of your head. That's 5/8 minus. You got 5/8 minus right there. It's a little broken down, but that's 5/8 minus. Or that's 3/4 minus. Or that's 3/4 clean. Or, whatever is whatever, You got to know that stuff so you can ask them too. So those are some questions you got to think about when you're doing a driveway, right? Are there power lines? Are there potholes? Do they just want you to spread it with your tailgate? Or do they want you to spread it with a machine? Do they want it level with a laser? Or do they want it just smoothed out, so there ain't going to be puddles? Smooth and level are different. When you're trying to explain that to a customer, smooth and level are completely different. Daryl's like, I want that leveled. Like, no, you don't want that leveled. You want that smooth. Because you want the water to drain a certain direction. And if it's level, it ain't draining. It's going to puddle, right? It's going to be stagnant across the whole thing. If you have a slight slope to it, that water's going to move in a certain direction when it rains. That's what you want. You don't want level, right? So you need to know what questions to ask. So if a building's going on, obviously you want it level. But if it's a driveway, you want it sloped slightly. You want it smooth. If you're going to do, some sort of, if you're doing a driveway or an excavation project, you also want to ask the homeowner if they know where the utilities are, right? That's a big plus. It saves you time, because a lot of homeowners already know where the utilities are. They've had work done in the past, or they've seen the utilities been put in, so they know. If you're doing excavation, guaranteed you still need to get locates done. But if you're not really scraping the surface, hardly, it's just nice to know where the stuff is. That way you're not scraping deeper than you have to. And then If you're doing excavation, you got to have the locates done. You need to know where their septic system is. If they have a septic, you need to know where that's at. You don't want to be, running over somebody's septic system and losing your back axle in a hole, or getting stuck, right? So you need to know where the property line is. Lots of times property lines are involved in these bids, right? So you can't be putting stuff on their neighbor's property. They may ask you to do it, but if it's on their neighbor's property and you don't have permission from their neighbor, you could get in big trouble. So those are things to think about in preparing yourself for a bid. Okay. Take notes on the bid, unless you got a really good memory. I always try and take pictures, before pictures, and then I always like to do, when I think I'm getting close to halfway, I always like to walk around with the customer and say, hey, how's this looking so far? What do you think? This is my plan. I'm planning on taking this area down a little bit more, but how you liking the look? It's looking pretty good, huh? And they're always like, yeah, that's looking good. I like it. Can you put a little bit more dirt in this section right here? I like that a little bit higher, or, hey, remember, don't forget this spot over here. Always go through halfway through the job and ask them to take a look with you, and just say, hey, this is the progress, this is what your money's paying for. And they love it. They love walking through the job. It takes, another half an hour, 45 minutes out of the job that you got to burn up, talking with them. But they are way happier, when you're doing the project. So talk with them halfway through. And then definitely, 100% definitely, you need to walk the job site with them when you're done. Before you pack that machine up, you need to say the exact words right here. Are you happy with the job? Is there anything that I missed? Say now or forever hold your peace. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to pack that machine up and have them talking to Becky. Man, that guy forgot this. He's such an idiot, or this or that, So always make sure that they're 100% satisfied before you leave. Even though sometimes you're going to lose money because they say something extra. This happened to me multiple times where they're like, hey, man, we talked about this in the bid. And it's like, no, we didn't talk about that, but I'll throw it in, Or if it's really something that for a fact, and you're like, that wasn't in the bid. My words are, is that about what you had in mind? Is that about what you had in mind? Yeah, that's definitely good. Is that what you had in mind? I said that today, actually, Drew. I was like, hey, is that about what you had in mind? Is it looking the way you expected it to? And 99% of the time, they're always ecstatic. They're like, yeah, that's looking amazing. And then they're even happier to pay you because they're getting exactly what they want. And most of the time, it looks better than what they can imagine in their own head because most people suck at imagining. They just suck at it, right? That's the same reason why when real estate agents go to sell a house, they put all the furnishings inside because people suck at imagining stuff, right? So you have to go in and, you have to try and get them to imagine what they want, and then you have to give them a cost for what they want. Then you start doing it, and then you go back and say, hey, is that what you wanted, And then 90% of the time, they're usually pretty happy with it, or they have something different in mind, And then they're like, oh, man, I thought this was going to look good, but let's try something else. And then that's when you stop and you say, well, that's what the bid was for. I can do what you want. That's not an issue. But, if it is something that's completely extra, you need to tell them now. That's going to, I can do that. I can rip out that stump as well, but it's going to cost you a little bit more. Probably, and then you tell them the amount. Like, if it's just another stump or something, then you say, well, I'm already here, that's extra $150, or, you just say, how does $150 sound for that? I know that's extra, and we didn't discuss that in the initial bid. So since I'm already here, let me give you a discount, $150, or whatever you would normally charge. You just kind of phrase it like that and tell them. That's what I do. And then they either go for it or they change their mind again, and they're like, well, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't have the money for that. So let's just go what we did initially, And they're like, okay. And then when you finish, then they're always happy anyways. So it's just the way it is. People don't know what they want until they see what they want. That's what it is. As an owner operator, you're gonna see that. So that's basically all I can really tell you about doing a bid on a bid. And then I feel like if I spoke to you with a customer, it wouldn't be 100% authentic because they would know they're on camera, and they, most people don't like being on camera. And then also, if I was on camera, I might forget something because, my brain's going in 20 other different directions trying to think, do I got a good angle on this bid? Do I need to get a different viewpoint? Or, so I can't really take you out on a bid, but that's basically all the information I can give you about preparing yourself for a bid. Oh, another thing. Okay, so before I forget this is very important. Preparing yourself for a bid, you have to know what the costs of materials are. You can't go do a bid and say, well, let me get back to you on the price. That's a sucky move. It does not reflect well on you and your business. You better know those prices before you go do the bid, right? So before you go do the bid, you know you're going to do a driveway, right? So I knew I was going to do a driveway. So I calculated out my prices. Like, okay, this is in Lake Cushman. Okay, I'm going to have the truck. It's an hour there, hour back, so 2 hours. So that's, if I take the big truck, that's $600 a load. If I take the small truck, that's $400 a load. Okay, so have that in your brain, right? Have that in your brain. And if you can't remember that, write it down. Write a note in your phone. 600 a load, 400 a load. And then when you get there and the guy's telling you how much he wants, he's like, I think 3 inches would be a good coat, and then you look at it and you say, okay, with my past experience, 3 inches, 75 feet, that's going to be 2 loads, right? So then, obviously the grading, you look at the grading, you see, is it going to take you a day? It's going to take you half a day. Usually I always bid it for a full day no matter what. Nowadays, I bid for a full day. Even if I know it's only going to take me half a day, I give them the full day because that's where I'm at in my business. I have so much business. I cannot do it for any cheaper than that because I start jumping over dollars to pick up dimes. So that's where I'm at. So no matter what, if it's just a small thing, unless it's super small and I can fit it in on a weekend, I'm bidding it for a full day for the excavator. So a full day with the excavator is basically, $1,200 roughly. 10 hours, $120 an hour, $1,200, right? That's kind of what I just do. And I already know, like, I'm to the point where I know how long something's going to take me. Like, I look at it and say, yeah, that's probably going to take me 2, 3 hours, 4 hours tops. 3 hours, and then you figure, hour to the job, hour back, an hour loading and unloading. So you're sitting at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours total. There, back, chain, unchain, unchain, right? 6, 7 hours, but I've been up for 10, right? That way, if that 3-hour job turns into, 4 or 5 hours, takes 2 or 3 hours longer, I didn't just cut my tail off, you know what I mean? So, when you do a bid, always, no matter what you do, always bid it 20 to 30% more than what you think it's going to take. Because if something goes wrong, you don't want to cut your own finger off, So you make sure you bid that 20 to 30% more than what you think it's going to take. right? That is the extra cost associated with giving a bid, right? If I'm going to take the risk of the time and the cost of materials, I'm getting compensated that 20%, 30%, right? So, and that's what I used to always tell my customers too. When I first started, I said, look, I can give you a bid, but I'm going to charge you 30% more than what I think it's going to cost in time and materials, because I'm not going to take that risk, and that risk, you do take the risk if you give a bid, but you have that extra cushion, right? So you're really not taking the risk because you have the extra cushion of that 30% higher bid, right? If you do it time and materials, then you do the job faster, you don't make any extra money, but the customer's happy because he got a more economical price. So I always do bids now, and I always just, I've gotten to the point where I know how long something's going to take me. And so if it's going to take me, 2 days, I'm bidding it for 2.5. If it's going to take me 3 days, I'm bidding it for 4 days, and so that's, you got to remember also. So like, I own dump trucks and excavators, right? So if I go do a driveway bid and I have to bring my excavator, I always charge, $1,200 for the excavator for the day, and then I throw in, whatever the load is going to cost, $600, right? So 1,200 plus 600, that's 1,800, right? That's one load of gravel and 1 day of pushing stuff around, grading, right? And then the customer's always like, well, I'd like a few wheelbarrows for this section. And say, okay, well, the bid could cost anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. You just go extra, because if they want more, they're already willing to pay for it. So you just tell them what the figure is, and they're usually okay with it, because the cost of material is the cost of material, They don't get to argue with that. That's just the way it is, unless they're paying for it themselves or picking it up themselves. And I would advise you to stay away from, if you got both dump truck and equipment, and if you got somebody who's trying to, hey man, I got a dump trailer, I'm going to go get the rock myself, I just need you to push it around with your excavator. Don't do those jobs. Don't do those jobs. If they're trying to cut costs that much, by picking up the rock themselves, or, those jobs never turn out good. Let me just put it that way. You never make any money on those jobs. They're a waste of your time. Don't do them. If you can just do it all, do it all. That's what I always try to do. Like, if I'm going to do a job, I want to be doing everything A to Z in the job. I don't want some other dude coming in and taking a portion of that hit. That ain't the way I work. So I had a job that I did a bid for. It was far up north. It was in like Union or something. It was like an hour and a half drive away to do the bid. Showed up, and the guy was like, this is exactly what he said, basically, almost word for word. He's like, I already know what I want. I want to put a drain in. This is the way I want the drain done. This is how deep I want the drain. This is the shape I want the drain. How much is it going to cost for you to show up with your excavator and put this drain in? And then how much for rock? And I said, oh, okay, if you want it done your way, this is roughly what it's going to cost. And the rock is this. And he's like, well, let me check to see if I can get a better price for rock. It's like, okay, if you're going to get a better price for rock, like, I'm already bringing my dump truck and my machine here. Why would I come empty? Like, I'm already giving you a smoking deal, right? So this guy, like, I just said, at the end of the bid, I said, hey man, if we don't get this on schedule, like, I can't really guarantee you any specific time, because summertime is really picking up. And these are the guys that are always like, hey man, I'm looking at doing this 2 months from now. And then they call you like a month later and like, hey man, I think I'm ready to do this in 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. And then they change their mind like, oh, I found somebody else to do the rock. I found a cheaper spot to do the rock. It's like, okay, well, there goes all the profit I wanted to make because I'm trying to make profit off the rock. You just want to pay me by the hour from the machine. You already know exactly what you want, so why don't you just go rent a machine and do it yourself? That's the type of person that's going to hold you on the job site for 3 hours longer than you want to be there. And you're going to end up doing stuff you didn't agree to do, And so when the guy called me, I just said, hey man, I'm really sorry, but I took going to last a few days and I'm not going to be able to squeeze you in. I'm sorry, but I do have a referral. I can refer you to this other company, or to this other guy. And then you pass him off to somebody else because you do not want to do those. You're going to get nickel and dimed. You're not going to make any money. And then that's the type of the guy, he's going to underpay you. He's never going to refer you because you didn't do it exactly the way he wanted, right? I know, I just fluffed. My wife just brought me some ice cream. Thank you, sweetie. So, the guys that say they know exactly what they want and they know exactly how they want it done and they want to tell you how to do your job, do not take jobs from them. Because I guarantee you, it will not end well. It will probably not end well. You don't want somebody micromanaging you. So it's okay for them to watch, but if they're like, hey man, when you scoop that, can you set the pile like a half a foot more, or scoop it like this, or you just don't want somebody telling you how to do your job. You're not going to have fun. You're not going to enjoy the job. You're not going to make any money because the guy's going to he's not going to want to pay you because you didn't do it exactly the way he wanted. So I've had that experience before, and that's how I knew this guy was a guy I didn't want to work for. And so I just made up some, excuse to not do it. Like, sorry, man, things have been picking up. I'm super swamped. And I didn't lie to him. That's the truth. That's when you apply aggravation of the, yes. But at the same time, like, you got to know when you think the customer is going to pay you that aggravation fee or are they not going to pay you, right? And if the guy is going to go get a load of gravel from somebody else because they're charging him $50 less, he ain't going to pay that aggravation fee. That's what it comes down to. He ain't going to pay that aggravation fee. So, I'm the type of guy, I want to do A to Z. I want to do the whole job myself. I don't want somebody else coming in and ruining my job. Yeah, the customer needs to think he's right. But you need to tell him if he's wrong. I mean, if he wants you to do something that's completely absurd, you need to stop him right there and say, hey, man, I love the thought you put into this. That's not typically how things are done when you're doing this. Like, for example, let me just say, if somebody wants a new driveway and they want pea gravel on their driveway instead of crushed rock, you just say, I love the thought you put into this. Here's why you don't want to do it that way. Pea gravel does not compact, and it's just going to be a mess. Like, you're not going to be able to drive through it because it's just going to spin the tires, the rocks roll, and I know it would look cool, but that's not the way you want to do it. And so you just got to tell them, like this guy wanted a drain. The way he wanted the drain was kind of stupid in my head, and I was like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't do a drain that way. if I was going to do a drain across the driveway, I would do a horizontal drain. That way, everything that comes to it, all the water goes in, you know. And he had this driveway that was a funnel, right? And he wanted it to stay that shape. And it's like, no, that ain't how you make a driveway. You do not want the water funneled down the center of it. Because then, 6 months into winter, you're going to call me up and say, hey, man, that rock you delivered was junk. It didn't even hold up to the rain, man. It washed away. Like, and that's what he was. That's one of the things he had said to me. He's like, yeah, the last guy that delivered rock was an idiot, man. He brought the wrong type of rock and it just washed down. And I'm like, dude, that's because you told him to have it a V in the freaking center of the driveway. Of course, it's going to funnel all the water down and it's going to pick up speed and it's going to take the rock with it. I didn't tell him that, but in my head, I was like, this guy's a moron, you know? And you can tell if you can, if the person is the type of person that they don't know what they're talking about, but they have good intentions, or if they're ignorant and they don't want to know. Like, you can tell when that person is that type of person. I can immediately tell this guy, if I tell him something, he's going to disagree. I was like, so just go with it, whatever they say, and then you just kind of say, yeah, I'm sorry, man, this isn't really the scope of work I try and do, or I never really try and say that. I usually try and say I'm too busy to pick this job up. I'm so sorry, but I don't have time on my schedule right now. We're booked out so far. And you don't say a date. Just say, just give them the runaround, Or you can just plain up, just tell them, sorry, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this job. But if you say that, guaranteed, they're going to say, well, why don't you want to do the job? Don't you want my money? And then you tell them, and then they're going to be even more mad, So it's just better to kind of give them the runaround, honestly. If it's a customer. And I hate to say this, that this is the way you have to do a bid, but there are people out there, you got to remember, you're in business to make money. You're in business to make money and make people happy. If you can't do both of those at the same time, don't do the job. Do not do the job if you can't make the customer happy and you can't make money. I mean, those are like the two rules I live by when doing a bid. If I can't make the customer happy and I can't make money, I'm not doing it. If the customer is not going to be happy with my job, I won't do the bid. Or if I can't make enough money, then I won't do the job either. Like, I'll just tell them, like, yeah, I'm sorry, this is a little bit smaller of a job than I typically take on, and I don't have the time, unfortunately, to do a job of this size. We typically do larger infrastructure type work. Just tell them it is what it is. Like, if it's a small job, and you're like, well, this is more of a landscaper's job than what I typically do. And that's a good one to remember. Like, if you're trying to do a bid and it's not going to pay enough, then you pass it off onto a landscaper. You say, well, that's really more of a landscape company's type of work scope. I'm more of an excavation dump trucking. So we typically do more along the lines of, installing utilities, building roads, like highways, and, just, you say whatever you got to say. Just make sure you're not lying, People can sense when you're lying, so don't lie. Anyways, guys, I've pretty much exhausted everything I can think about. Know your prices before you go do a bid. That's a very big one. Know your prices before you get out there. Because everybody wants to hear a number. As soon as you get out there, they want to know the number. That's the only reason they called you. They want to know what the number is. But you want to become their friend. You want to inspire trust in them. You want to inspire into them that you know exactly how the job should be done, how it's supposed to be done. They have to know this type of stuff, right? They have to feel this when you do the bid. And it's hard, guys, but I think I did the best I could at explaining it. So big one is know your prices, have time to do the bid, because people love to talk. So, that's all I can really tell you guys. Happy bidding, and I wish you guys the best of luck in your business. And remember, don't jump over dollars to pick up dimes. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Don't forget to pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, share this on your social media site of preference. Check out the Instagram, the Facebook. Check out the playlist. I got tons of playlists. Frequently asked questions. I got the build playlist, the work playlists. Anyways, this video's over. Now let me show you guys what I had to do to the International today, because I know you guys are sticking around today since it was in the picture. Here's that stupid thing. Today on the International, we had an air leak. It was a small air leak. Did that thing go? I'll just show you what it looked like. Give me a second. I think I threw it away. Oh, there it is. Okay. I replaced one of these today. This is a diaphragm. You can see the light through that hole. That shouldn't look like that. All the rubber is all tore up. That's what it should look like. Nice and smooth. That's a diaphragm in a drop axle brake chamber. So the driver, this is what he said. He said, basically, when I press the brake, I lose air pressure. Okay, so that right there tells you two things. Number one thing is it's not the air pressure that cages the brake spring, right? That's the first thing it tells you. It tells you that it's a service, meaning you press the brake and it services the brakes. So it's a service. It's either an airline or it's a diaphragm, right? Those are the two things it tells you. When they press on the brake and it's leaking, that's two things. One of two things. It's either an airline to the brakes or it is the brake chamber itself. And so I had my wife, she came over here, I chocked the tires of the truck, I lifted the bed up, put the pins in, and I chocked the tires and I released the parking brake. And then I told my wife, I said, stomp on it and keep equal pressure. And then, you can turn the truck off or you can keep the truck on, depending on how bad the leak is. If the truck's on, it might be harder to hear. If it's off, it'll be easier to hear. So shut it off. That's usually what I do. Just shut it off. And so started looking around the truck. Couldn't hear nothing. Then finally came over this side and excuse me. Came over to this brake chamber right here. And you could hear air coming right out of here. Where that piston is, right? You could hear air coming right out of this thing, right out of that hole. So I knew, boom, automatic diaphragm's blown. There's either a hole in it or guaranteed there's a hole in it, right? So basically, it's only a service air can, right? So it does not have a spring in it. You know that because it's very small compared to these back brake chambers that are massive, right? So these are massive brake chambers, right? These have a spring inside of them. And if you don't cage that brake before you pull this off, this clamp or this clamp, you can cause yourself serious injury or death. Basically, to cage the brake, you pull this out, right? You take this bolt, you jam it in there, and you tighten that sucker all the way up until, the threads are way out there as tight as it'll go. And then that's how you know the brake's caged. Watch some other videos. Don't take my advice 100% as word. I'm not responsible if you get killed or hurt. Anyways, this one doesn't have a spring in it, so I just popped that sucker loose with 1/2-inch ratchet Milwaukee and a 1/2-inch Power Torx ratchet. Popped it loose, and then once you get that bolt off, then you have to pry it open a little bit. That way you can separate it, pull the diaphragm out. Putting it back together is kind of a pain in the butt. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of a pain. But what helps me is I take a C-clamp, clamp this sucker this way, and then I take a C-clamp and I clamp this way, right? So one C-clamp is squeezing it together. That way this ridge can be inside of this lip of this, carriage or whatever it's called. And then, then I just tightened it down. But easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That's how it's done. And that part, the diaphragm itself, is only like $4. If you buy this whole chamber, you're going to spend $60 to $70, maybe 20 or 30, I can't remember. But the diaphragm is way cheaper and usually faster and easier to replace, because when you buy this whole service thing, this whole service can, sometimes these strip out when you're trying to take them out. They're just a pain. You have to undo this. You have to take this pin out, which sometimes that keeper is a pain in the butt. Then, depending on the type you get, sometimes they have this yoke and sometimes they don't. So you have to unscrew this from the one that's on there. Or sometimes they come with them. They usually come with them sometimes, I think. I can't remember. It's been so long since I bought one. And then the bolt is really long and you have to cut it the same length as this. Make sure you thread a bolt on there first and then cut it and then thread the bolt off. That way you can still thread something on easier without fighting it, without gumming up the threads when you cut it. And then you got 2 more bolts, 1, 2, so it's way faster. 1 bolt undoes that. Swap out the diaphragm, put 2 clamps on there, squeeze it back together, boom, done. So that's what I do. On these big brake cans, I've never changed the diaphragm in a big one because I'm afraid of the cage bolt not holding the spring back. So I'm a little paranoid about that. So I've only had to replace 1 or 2 of those, but I just replaced the whole air can. And I got 2 spare air cans already in here in my supply. So this is just, if you have a truck with a lot of drop axles, pick 1 or 2 of these up. They're only like $3, $4. So I have like 3 of these still. I bought them because my old 85 has wedge brakes on the front and it has only service cans. And you cannot find the service cans anymore. You have to just buy the diaphragm and replace the diaphragm. So there's that. Another thing I had to do was I had to replace one of these other stupid high-speed air dump valves for the drop axle. Another one of these. I had to replace it. It wasn't leaking when the truck was on or anything or up to air pressure, but as soon as you shut the truck off and it starts leaking air pressure, as soon as it gets to a certain PSI, then that one right there was starting to just leak. And I was like, I'll just toss a new one on because I don't want it ruined in a day. I don't want to have to drive out to somewhere and replace that stupid part because my driver can't figure it out, you know. But I did have that one in the door of the truck, just in case, because I knew that one was starting to go, but it wasn't anywhere really close. So I got a few extra of those too. As you've seen in the drawer, I got a few extra diaphragms. So, just when you have a truck with a lot of the same thing, as soon as one part wears out, buy multiple pieces of that same part. Because, it's got multiple, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 diaphragms for the service cans on this one truck. So if one of them blew because it was worn out and there was oil in the air because the air compressor was bad, how many other ones are getting ready to blow too? So think about that. It's something to think about when you're running your business. Like, if one of them blew today, and why did it blow? Well, there was oil in the airlines. Okay, well, does oil in the airlines only affect one service can, or does it affect all of them? Obviously, it affects all of them. So, buy extra, because, and you don't have to replace them all when one goes. Just have the parts available, because usually when a diaphragm blows, usually you can either get through the day, or, usually if it's just a drop axle, you can get through the day, no problem. If it's the diaphragm on the drive tires, that's another story. Because then, if you want to get through the day, you have to pinch that airline that goes to cage the brakes. You have to pinch the airline that cages the brakes, and you have to cage the brake itself and back it off, right, just to get through the day, which I don't recommend, but, lots of guys out there do it, so it is what it is. But you can do it, you can get through the day. Is it advised? No, it's not advised. What's a police officer going to say when he sees it? Think about that stuff before you do it. So, anyways, guys, I showed you what. Oh, I didn't even tell you. We got the lights fixed. So, yeah, they ran a whole new wire. Right here, you can see the new wire. Just 5 new wires. They ran the whole new thing all the way up through the tailgate. So there was a short somewhere in the tailgate. I'm suspecting that the short was, so that wire goes up through this, comes through here, goes up this pillar, and then out that hole right up there. And then it goes into the tailgate. So the short was basically somewhere from here to the light. And what was happening is as soon as you put the truck into drive, the computer would sense a short and shut the power off all the way to the back. And so they replaced the wires. I had to go down to the dealership, and this was one of the things, you will have to do this, guaranteed, in your business. Guaranteed, this will happen to you. You'll drop a truck off, try to get it worked on. It'll cost way more than you anticipate, and you will be very unhappy. And then the problem won't be fixed, so you have to go back in again. This is what you do. When something like that happens, you ask for the manager, the service manager. You ask for the technician to come out to the truck. And this is what you do. This is exactly what I did. I said, okay, show me exactly what you did the first time you had the truck for 5 days. Show me exactly what you did, right? And so then they point out, well, there was one wire here that was on the wrong circuit. And then you say to the service manager, you say, okay, so you only fixed one wire in 5 days? And so then you have to say, okay, well, one wire in 5 days, like, I understand that was on the wrong circuit, but that was one wire, and it took you 5 days to figure it out. And I showed you what I had done. I had already showed them that I did that. And so then I said, that doesn't sound like that's worth, how much did I pay? $2,300. That doesn't sound like that's worth $2,300 to me, right? And then I said, okay, now show me the second time you had the truck for 4 days. Show me exactly what you have found and why your bid reflects $2,800. I want to see exactly why your bid reflects that, right? And then, so they're like, well, okay, so the wire's rubbed right here. This is what they showed me. The wire was rubbed right in here, one place only. And then, let's see, where else? Yeah, that was basically it. That was it, and there was one connector that was loose. And I said, okay. And I looked directly at the service manager, not at the technician. I looked directly at the service manager, and I said, realistically, myself, I could put a whole new wire, 5 wires. It's probably 15 feet of wire, maybe 25 at the max. It's going to cost me $50 in wire. And it will take me 3 hours to do it myself. Why is your cost showing me $2,800? Show me how this is worth $2,800. Literally, all you have to do is cut the wires, tie a string to it, pull the whole thing out, use that same string, tie it to the new wire, pull it in, do the crimp fittings, done. 4-hour job. Why are you charging me $2,800 for $50 in material in 4 hours? And then that's when they change their tune, because you know what you're talking about, And then another thing you want to do is, especially if they broke something on your truck. If they broke something on your truck, you have to say, look, I understand this happens. When you're working on stuff, you cut zip ties and everything. And this is what I said. This was exactly what I did. I said, here, come over here for a second, service manager. I said, come over here for a second. Would you take a look at this real quick? So when they were working on these wires, obviously they cut these zip ties. Boom, boom, boom. The first time I picked the truck up, they neglected to zip tie this air hose up. And then I just took it because it wasn't zip tied, and I just tossed it right down here. Right down to the drive line. And I said, do you see that? During the week, that valve broke, and I had to replace that on my own because the technician failed to zip tie that. That cost downtime and money. See the correlation? See the new valve? And I pointed that out to him. And I said, I'm not angry. I'm just saying that was something that was overlooked. Cost me time, cost me more money. Work with me on this. So the service manager, obviously, they want to make you happy because they want you back and they want all your money, right? So at the end of the day, you show them stuff like that, they're going to be more willing to work with you on the price. right? And so, you know, it is what it is. So we finally got that fixed. The lights work amazing now. It didn't cost me that much more, thank goodness. But that was only because I went down there. I did a walkthrough with the technician and with the service manager. Not the service writer, the head of the department. I hate to say it, guys, but sometimes you gotta be the Karen. You gotta be the Kyle. You gotta go up, you gotta ask for the manager. You know, that's just, if you don't go to the, up the chain of command, you're gonna get stuck with that price that you don't wanna pay. Sometimes you gotta go up the chain of command to get a better deal, to get somebody who understands how business works. You know, it's no disrespect to the service people, you know, they're just trying to do their job, but you're trying to run a business, right? And so it is what it is. You know, sometimes you got to go up that chain of command to make things right, to make it fair. And, you know, some people call it being a Karen or being a Kyle or whatever. And yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to make that wheel squeak, you're not going to get the grease. That's what it comes down to. You know, if you ain't willing to ruffle some feathers, that's what it comes down to, guys. You got to be willing to go in there. And I'm not saying go in there and cuss people out. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying go in there and yell at them and scream at them. But you need to be stern, and you need to talk to them just like how I'm doing. I want to understand why this is the cost and what goes into this project. And then you tell them, this is how I understand it. Make me understand. Help me understand, right? Because I want to feel like I'm being treated fairly, you know? And if you're telling me you did all this work, show me the work. Trust but verify. It just goes hand in hand. It's not that I don't trust you, you know. Trust but verify. It's just a saying we all live by, you know. It's just like, you know, that's why couples always check their significant other's phones, you know. They trust, but they gotta verify that they ain't chatting somebody else up, you know. I mean, that's trust but verify, right? The truth does not need to be protected. Amen. Right? If it is what it is, so just tell it like it is. You know, if you're trying to hide something, you know, that's when it's not right. Something shady's going on, you know. And, you know, I hate to say it like this, but, you know, and I got nothing against service writers, but their job is to make that company money. That's their job. If they ain't making them money, then they're gonna get fired, right? So their job is to charge the most that they can for that job, just like it is our job to bid that job for the most we can bid it for. You know, we got to make money, they got to be happy, right? Those are the two rules, you know. So when you get somebody else to do a job for you, they have to follow those same rules too. They got to make money, you got to be happy. If you ain't happy, you better not be paying them money. That's just the way it goes. So, anyways, guys, I've been on here rambling and ranting for a long time, talking to you guys about everything. You guys have been pretty, not too active in the chat, but a little bit. Joe, he thinks he's some sort of needy ass in. When I lift it up, you can't see it as, but anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys. Have a great week, and I'll probably pop on later, you know, who knows when. So I'll catch you guys on the next one.